Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. I do my introduction to my newsletter for April the 12th, 2019. Well, the latest news obviously on the Brexit front is that it was now postponed to the 31st of October 2019, so several more months to go, 6 months I believe. It's ridiculous, to be honest with you. I've given you a link to read what Theresa May said about it, but to be honest with you, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, I don't know, we need better MPs, that's for sure. Okay, so on to the news stories for this week. Success of first Scottish pantry in Aberdeen offers food for thought. I thought this was an interesting article. It's a basket full of high quality food for £2.50. May seem too good to be true, but that's now the reality for shoppers at Scotland's first food pantry. Not food bank, but food pantry. So, I don't know, I think you might want to have a wee read of that just to understand what's going on, because if it goes well, apparently there's plans to add another 3 of these pantries in Aberdeen. So we'll see how it goes. Top German car makers charged with blocking clean emissions technology. It says BMW and Volkswagen face possible hefty fines after EU antitrust regulators on Friday charged them and whistleblower Daimler with colluding to block the rollout of clean emissions technology. So it's probably a few more billion-dollar fines on top of Volkswagen anyway. Next story is Sir Billy Connolly led New York City Tartan Day Parade. Around 30,000 spectators watched the Scottish comedian perform the role of Grand Marshal. Strikes me, that I don't know. I did find a video showing you a bit of it, and actually it looks a bit empty, really, considering the venue. So I don't know. I think they need to do a better job there. Okay, Young Scots Pipers in flash mob performance at Grand Central Station. Says a young pipe band brought Grand Central Station in New York to a standstill with an impromptu performance ahead of their appearance in the Tartan Day Parade. This is the Sunday Post. Good one, that. William completes humbling work experience with spy agencies. Says the Duke of Cambridge has spent a humbling 3 weeks working with MI5, MI6 and GCHQ to better understand how the UK's security and intelligence agencies work. By all accounts, he did very well, and they were quite praiseworthy for the work he put into that, so that's another story worth having a read at. Those wanting a close UK-EU relationship should beware Brussels' opaque lawmaking processes. So the Council of European Union doesn't reach decisions by magic. A cascade of rules and laws flows through over 150 specialised working parties and committees known as the Council Preparatory Bodies. The case for restoring the lost rivers of Scotland is the next story I've got for you. It says the social and economic regeneration benefits of doing this are proven. What's needed now is some ambition from our politicians and innovation from our engineers, planners and urban designers and ecologists. The one for the Canadians, Justin Trudeau falls from grace. Said the Canadian Prime Minister faces a political crisis of his own devising. The next story I found was it's from Foreign Affairs. It says, Broken Europe, why the EU is stuck in perpetual crisis. The next story is Edinburgh school pupils get their own back on teacher with Tunnock's tea cake maths challenge. It says the humble tea cake has been used to create a quirky maths formula by a class of enterprising Scots pupils. Definitely want to read that. That's a really good story. Scientists save one of the world's rarest trees found by accident on the Isle of Arran. It says only one catechol white beam is known to exist in the wild in Scotland, putting it in joint top spot as the most critically endangered tree on the planet. Then my muse, your muse, anybody's muse. It says John Byrne hails the genius behind Oor Wullie. And that's from the Sunday Post, of course. Remains of 14th century castle uncovered in Orkney. It says the remains of 14th century castle being found in Orkney by archaeologists. Who now doubts the power of the EU is the next story I have. It says before the referendum, pro-Remain commentators and MPs delighted in telling us we were a free and independent country while still in the EU. Obviously this shows that we're not. And then BBC's Jackie Bird leads Reporting Scotland. I highlight this because she's been doing it for the past 3 decades, so a lot of expat Scots around the world will probably remember her. So it's telling what she's going to be doing next. Then new £150 million Caledonian sleeper trains are hotels on wheels. It says from June 75 new carriages will offer ensuite double rooms for the first time. So a bit of luxury when you travel from London up to Scotland. Julian Assange arrested. WikiLeaks founder faces US extradition because the embassies kicked him out basically because apparently he wasn't doing very well with them. So they decided to remove his residence. So the British police popped in, arrested him, and now he's going to prison for about a year as well. Next story is, in fact the last story I've got for you, is Distillery makes a case for its claim that it's officially Scotland's oldest licensed whisky distillery. It's interesting because it's in the south. It says it's one of the most debated subjects within the Scottish whisky industry. Now, new evidence being put forward states that a popular Lowland distillery, which last produced whisky in the early 1990s, is officially the oldest licensed whisky distillery in Scotland. So there you go. Now, on to Electric Canadian. Just as Brexit is dominating British politics, the SNC Lavalin scandal is likewise dominating Canadian politics. And I thought I'd give you a link to some of what's going on there. Canadian Archive reports. I've added the 1905 report, and it's in 3 parts, A, B and C. And volume 21 of the Canadian Horticulturist has been put up. I personally, the reason I'm putting so many volumes up is I'm really enjoying reading that, to be honest with you. Okay, so, and then unpublished old Gaelic songs with illustrative traditions. It's by Colin Chisholm and published in 1885. It's mostly in the Gaelic language, but some introductions are in English. So you get a wee idea of what's going on there. If anyone that speaks Gaelic would like to translate any of the great poems that are in there, I'd love to have a copy to put up on the side. In a small book, Farming in Canada or Life in the Backwoods by Frank Lynn. So that's quite interesting. Ecclesiastical History of Newfoundland by the Very Reverend M.F. Howley, D.D., produced in 1886. It's not just ecclesiastical, it's got other histories in there, so it makes that interesting read. Newfoundland was the last province to come into the Confederation. So the next one is James Richardson. He's a leading grain merchant in central Ontario. Also contains information on other names. It's just a small 46 pages or so like that, but it's quite interesting, I thought, because clearly he's done a good job for his community. And then I found a copy of the Dominion Annual Register and Review. So I've offered you a copy there with some background information on the publication itself. It says it's no exaggeration to say that the want of a work of the scope and character of the Dominion Annual Register and Review has been long felt in Canada. So the politician, the journalist, the man of business, and the student of history have each felt the need of a work where information on an accurate and reliable character touches the present political and domestic concerns of the Dominion and of its several provinces. Okay, and then I put up a book called Laurie Todd. It's by John Galt, famous Scottish author. It's in 3 volumes, and I must confess it's really about a Scot, left Scotland, went to America, not Canada, went to America, and settled and did very well. He worked for a time in New York and then went out further into America and bought some land and eventually did extremely well. So as I say, I read all 3 volumes. Most of it I really enjoyed reading. It was a bit repetitive, but you can easily skip past an odd chapter or so if you're getting a wee bit bored in reading it. But I enjoyed it. Some really good characters in there. And then Conrad Black. If you think US politics is bad, check out Britain. Yeah. Okay, now on to Electric Scotland. I've got up the volume 33, January to April 1899 of the Scottish Review. Clan Munro of Australia sent in the April 2019 newsletter. And then I have a book about Colin Chisholm. He was Inspector General of Ordnance Hospitals in the West Indies, and you can read about him with the file I produced for him. He's actually quite a character, and that's why, I mean, I love biographies, always have done really, but yet a military life and under ordinary circumstances seldom affords a favourite scope for the development of medical genius. The previous education and peculiar habits of his profession in some measure unfit the medical officer for the passive duties of subordinate sphere, while the various restraints and checks to which he became subject by the ungenial nature and undefined liabilities of military control are so many discouragements to the acquirement of that elastic and vigour of mind so essential to the improvement of the mental facilities. Notwithstanding these serious difficulties, added to those more immediately arising in former days from an imperfect organisation of the medical department itself, and its undue estimation and respectability in the service in regard to rank and emolument, both the Army and Navy have given birth to many whose genius surrounding the ordinary disadvantages for the station has raised them to the first rank in medical and surgery, not to mention several living instances of men whose knowledge and experience render them ornaments in medical science. So there you go, that's a wee bit from it. It says in Dr. Colin Chisholm, the subject of the following biographical sketch, was also one of those who commenced his career in the service of his country. He was a native of Inverness-shire in the northwest part of Scotland, where he was born in the year 1755. So, I've also got A Boy's Adventures in the Wilds of Australia, or Herbert's Notebook by William Howitt. It was produced in 1854. So I'm trying to give you a wee bit more background on Australia, because obviously I'm doing a lot of work in Canada. Then we've got Alan Octavian Hume, CV. He was father of the Indian National Congress, 1829 to 1912, by Sir William Wedderburn. Semi-fascinating character, and I hope you'll enjoy reading about him. Again, I love biographies. You learn so much from them. Then I found the history of the Meharry family in America, descendants of Alexander Meharry, who fled during the reign of Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots, on account of religious persecution from near Ayr in Scotland to Ballymastone, Cavan County, Ireland, and whose descendants Alexander Meharry III emigrated to America in 1794. So an interesting wee story that. Clan Baird sent me in a new fact sheet. It's a new fact sheet for update in April 2019. So I've added to their Baird page on the site. Then a great wee book which I enjoyed reading, The Annals of a Fishing Village. It's by Son of the Marshes, edited by J.A. Owen in 1892. And I added it to the foot of our Fishing Heritage page. And then From Chart House to Bush Hut, being the record of a sailor's 7 years in the Queensland bush, by C.W. Bride. Again, it's another one, Australia, that. And then finally, Cattle and Cattle Breeders, by William Maccombie, MP, Tillyfour. This is the second edition in 1894. So you cattle breeders out there will enjoy reading that. Then the story, this week I've just given you a wee story. It's quoted from the Drummer on Foot magazine. It's really about Canada. So there you go. That's should make some good reading for you over this next week or so, over the weekend. So hope you enjoy it. And remember, as always, at electroscotland.com/cotnews.htm is where I post all the news. And I say I put up a lot more news than I give you this wee summary. I'm just picking some stuff that might be interesting for you. So there you go. As always, I've put up a link so you can download the newsletter to get the links to all these stories and articles I've got for you. Okay, so that's it. Nice talking to you again. Have a good weekend when it comes, and look forward to hearing from you. Cheers.